critical race theory, the 1619 Project, and the crusade against American history is toxic propaganda.
Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with
the melanin content of 2,500 milligrams per square centimeter.
What the hell is melanin?
Doctor.
The amount of melanin in one's skin varies according to how dark or tan we might be. 2,500 milligrams per square centimeter corresponds to the darkness of, what I'd say to be an ordinary paper bag.
Thank you, Doctor. In other news,
everybody knows police brutality exists.
Kirby, I'd like to also ask
if I gave you this file here that's filled with hundreds of people that have been locked up for carrying guns recently.
I'd like to ask you another question, Mr. Kovalevsky.
Right.
Do you believe that there has ever been a case of police brutality against a black citizen in the city of Newark?
Now, that all depends on what you consider to be police brutality. I'm going to answer your question.
Physical abuse of a citizen in the city. Physical abuse in the city.
Now, listen, if I was to say that...
Do you believe that there has ever been a case?
An isolated
Let me tell you one little story. Let me tell you one little story.
To Black America, what is it that we want?
Reverend Clegg.
You know what it is. Everybody knows what it is. Now, black people are not going to permit police brutality to go on.
Reverend Clegg.
City in America.
Reverend Clegg.
We had in almost 100 cities race violence last summer. If police brutality continues, we'll have it in 200 cities next summer.
Screaming and demanding justice and setting fires and rioting and looting businesses. That is not the America that I recognize. It is not the America that I want to raise my children. It is not the America that I want to see my family live in. And so I use my voice to speak out against it. My question is, why don't you?
And black people have decided they're not going to tolerate oppression any longer. Now, police brutality is a very deliberate thing. It's a part of American life. America has decided that black people are to be kept in subjection. It's an army of occupation that the white power structure keeps in the black ghetto. We know. Now, don't talk about what is the incident?
Technique. Yes, I have some reactions to that. I think it seems that police are more concerned with putting down riots and enforcing law, and don't seem to be concerned with some of the causes that are leading to some of the distress into the riots. So they react with sort of repressive measures, and we're going to suppress more people, and we're going to kill them, and so on. Now, I think this whole question of these new weapons that police is getting quite out of hand, and I think in particular, besides these rifles, the chemical mace, which is a tear gas spray that's been purchased in large quantities by many police departments around the country.
Before we go into the techniques and technicalities of mace, I want to interrupt to ask Mr. Parcell in Philadelphia, the president of the Detroit Police Officers Association, if he has...
Time.
What?
Girl, don't want me. Bring your little behind in here.
I don't want to watch you pee.
Time! Hey, quit bullshit now. I ain't got time for this now. Time!
We're going down to Chief Jenkins in Atlanta at this particular
I don't
point.
think you're giving us a fair shake.
We'll get back to you. Chief Jenkins, can you pull some of these strings together from your point of view and get some balance out of this discourse?
Well, I'd like to say at this point that I regret that more police chiefs did not appear on this program tonight because I don't think they've been well represented. Now, this program, I think, has emphasized that this nation has a very serious problem that we must find the answer to it. Now, the first order of business must always be law and order and justice for all. Now, the causes must be identified and they must be corrected. And that is exactly what we're determined to do here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'd like for Reverend Williams to speak on that also.
Thank you very much, Chief. I've listened to the dialogue which has been going on here, and I know that the gentlemen in Newark have some problems, but I don't think we've been talking about what really concerns us. One of the things that I'd like us to get back on, and this is the question of white fear, and the fact that the police department in the city of Detroit is arming itself with the Stoner rifle, seems to me to lend support to the claim of the minorities in that city that they have something to fear. I certainly share the opinion of somebody who said this is not the sort of thing we want in a democratic society. Now, one of the things that we've got to understand is that white citizens do not have the same reason to complain as Negroes do against the police department.
Why is that so, Reverend?
This is so because policemen do make a difference in the treatment of Negro citizens and whites.
Why is that so?
That is so because they belong to a majority race of people who in this nation feel that there ought to be a difference made between Negroes and whites. Anybody in his sane mind knows that in America we have made differences between white and Negroes for a long time, and the majority of the whites still feel Negroes are inferior to whites and that they ought to be treated differently. Policemen are no different in this regard. I think the police department in Atlanta is working on the problem. We haven't cured it by any means. There are some policemen on our department here who haven't gotten the message yet that we're moving into a new era, and that they must themselves reorganize their attitude towards people. And when we talk about the hostility the police departments have, we've got to realize that I think most of these policemen feel they are representing the majority of the people in the community. I think in Atlanta, Georgia, when the police department knows that all of the citizens, including Negroes and whites, do not condone any of the skullduggery which they may engage in, it will stop. It'll happen in Detroit when white citizens support other citizens in that city. Seeing that policemen deal justly with all citizens, you will not have the same kind of problem. Now,
Reverend Williams,
yes.
time is running out on us. We're going to get back to you.
I think you'll agree. The sociologists, the economists, and other experts say that the masses of black people are dissatisfied, unemployed, oppressed, and fed up, so that he actually gets his support at the mass level. But now you have other Negroes at the class level who pretend not to go for him, because usually their job has been given to them by the white man. They have positions to which they have been appointed, and they think that the only way that they can protect their job is by pretending in front of the white man.
And these niggas say, why isn't David Chappelle saying anything? Because David Chappelle understands what the fuck he is seeing. And these streets will speak for themselves whether I'm alive or dead. I trust you guys. Let's enjoy your riots. They're not really even riots. Have you noticed that?
He was basically offering an excuse for the rioting and the looting that we're seeing. He's saying the streets are finally responding in the way that they need to respond. Well, let's just look at Black history to see if the streets responding and the streets being alive with rioting and looting in their own communities has ever served us. Where have we seen this before in Black America? You talk about the mid-1960s, the riots in Chicago, the riots in Detroit, where Black Americans upset about race issues, burned down their own neighborhoods and rioted. And what was the conclusion of that? Well, the conclusion, of course, was that naturally, the once flourishing cities, the automobile industries that were flourishing in Detroit and Chicago, they picked up, they packed up, and they left. And they depressed those neighborhoods. You want to know why Detroit looks the way that it does today? Why Chicago looks the way that it does today? Why Black Americans struggle in those inner city communities today? Well, it's because they chased out the business owners who said, there's no point for us to be here if this is how our businesses are going to be treated. They took the jobs with them. They took the economy with them. And what we see today is the consequence of that. So we're going to repeat all of that. And it's been endorsed by Dave Chappelle because the streets are alive. Black America is alive with anger, even if that anger, as we're seeing today, is not exactly justified.
It's so close to home. And we have to acknowledge our privilege and acknowledge the situation, which is we have agency. We have agency to lobby our government to change this and to stop these criminal acts.
Which the government itself has not made an effort or a step to take care of. So we all, I believe, are at each other's throats because the government has not laid down the laws of this land as far as the Constitution is concerned. We still put up with people like
Chris Hogan, who's a black financial expert, he did a survey of 10,000 people, and what he found was that of those 10,000 people, 74% of millennials believed millionaires inherited their money, 52% of baby boomers did, but only 21% of millionaires received any inheritance at all. Just 16% inherited more than $100,000, only 3% received an inheritance
at or above $1 million. In reality, the best path toward wealth in this country is income mobility, not inherited wealth. This is factually untrue. The reality is,
why not just let the gangbangers kill one another? Is that what we want? Is that what we want to see? Blood splattered in the streets with no recourse?
And there came a time in the 60s when police officers became very frustrated with this. Day after day, we're out there. People are blocking highways, blocking the traffic to protest something or another. And people are picketing in front of an office building. Some company official is calling and screaming, "Get them out of here, lock them up." And you're in the middle. People had a right to protest, a right to free speech. There were rules. You couldn't lock them all up. But many of these powerful people had had their way until now, and as things began to change, the police were there to maintain order.
But when the answer to your problems come knocking on your door, are you ready to stop hanging on to your hang-ups?
Police power is always incredibly dangerous, and that a realistic media always watches and observes policemen and always tries to restrain policemen from unjust actions against citizens and any interference that's illegitimate with the ordinary person. Now, the ordinary person also is aware that policemen can abuse this authority. What was one of the shocking things of the 1960s, that we had this incredibly dumb generation of people that were shocked that policemen abuse authority.
I don't think that they would knowingly allow themselves to be used or misused against their own people. So if they are failing to do the job that our people expect of them, probably it's just through lack of understanding. But today their understanding is increasing, and you'll find that they're developing a better ability to work with all different factions for the betterment of our people. You have to set an example if you want others to do right and live a highly disciplined and a highly moral life of high morals. And by the parents displaying the highest of morals in front of the children at all times, automatically this sets a pattern or an example for the children. And in our schools, our children, the emphasis is placed upon the recognition of authority. And by the children recognizing authority and respecting authority, it's easy for anyone who is in authority to teach the child and discipline the child and make the child aware of the importance of living a life in accord with the law even after he grows up.
The Negro community has come forward to the police department, Detroit, and asked for more police protection.
All of its propaganda is directed at us to convince us that somehow or the other we must become white before they will accept us.
The problem is the divide and conquer tactics have always been used by the oppressor to keep the oppressed oppressed. And the NAACP has been used against the Muslims. Efforts have been made to use us against them. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says he'll work with the NAACP, the Urban League, and any other Negro organization that wants to uplift the black man as long as it doesn't conflict with our religious principles.
The problem is the standard for discussion is set by the whites. And a lot of Negroes now don't want to accept that standard anymore. They say, we're going to have our own standard. I think that the hookup comes if you can develop a whole new standard where whites and Negroes can have a dialogue. Not either one of those are acceptable anymore. I mean, whites aren't going to accept Negro standards, and Negroes no longer want to be white. So that the clear thing is to develop a whole new standard, and then everybody move toward that so there can be some kind of dialogue.
I'm the vice president.
We are space traders bearing exquisite gifts that will restore your nation to its former glory. Nearly limitless quantities of gold and precious metals that will instantly erase your deficit. Machines that will renew your rivers and your air. Cold fusion technology for a safe, cheap, and inexhaustible source of energy. All we ask in return is the delivery to our vessels 5 days from now. Every child, woman, and man in your nation with at least 2,500 milligrams of melanin in their skin per square centimeter.
What the hell is melanin? Most people say, if you don't like it here, get out. That's for spineless people. Spineless bastards who don't want to fight for what they believe in. Well, I'm staying here because I was born here, and I am going to fight for my freedom. And before I have kids, I am going to make sure that this damn United States deserves the existence of my kids, because I will not rest until every Sunday school is safe for my kids, so that they won't get killed or beaten up like those kids down in Mississippi.
Now, there are many black veterans who are coming back, and they're mad, they're angry. Do you think that they're going to sit down through this? Our fathers didn't have the knowledge that we have. They sat through it. But there are other black youth that are not going to sit through it. We know about Che, we know about Fannin. We've read the books of our revolution. We've listened to Mao and his quotations. We know where we stand. We're not going to sit for it. We're asking, and if we ask and we don't get, we're prepared to stand up and take it. If I ask a man, I tell a man I am hungry. I tell him I am cold. And I ask him to do something about my condition. And this man holds a loaf of bread right in front of me so I can see it, and I keep asking him, I'm begging him to please give me a slice of the loaf of bread. I am hungry. Then it is known by every psychologist that the next step in the progression is I am going to knock him upside the head and take the bread from him. I'm not going to starve to death. All we're asking, no one wants to see blood. No one likes the smell of blood. No one wants war. Anyone who's been in war doesn't want war. Everyone knows what it is to see the inside of a man's gut hanging out and see your friends die, see relatives die. No one wants to regress back to the state of mind where you have to think it's all for the cause, therefore my mother has to die, my wife has to die, my brothers and sisters have to die. No one wants that. But you're pushing us to it. You're leaving us no choice. We're asking, we're begging. The students up at Columbia, they ask. The brothers down south ask. The brothers in Latin America, the brothers in Africa, they're all asking. All they're doing is asking. Our fathers asked. Our grandfathers asked. The presidents of our universities, our colleges had to go to your back doors to beg that their children be given just enough money so that they could be taught something to live off. And yet still they asked and asked and asked, and you refused to give them anything.
I asked him, what did the Negro community want?
He wants freedom, justice, and equality for the black people here in America, which you agree they don't have. If they did, you wouldn't have a race problem. And he says, if America cannot bring about freedom, justice, and equality for our people in this country, then America should allow us to leave. If we can't get along together, we should be allowed to depart and go someplace where we can set up housekeeping for ourselves. Then he says, if America doesn't want us to go back home among our own people, and at the same time they want to keep us here, since we can't stay here and get along together in peace, he says what America should do is separate part of the country and give us a section where we can live, and give us everything we need to get our particular section functioning independently, support us for 25 years until we are able to function independently in a society of our own, and in this way the problem will be solved.
The solution here isn't rocket science. Make corruption illegal. We already know Congress won't do it. I mean, one look at this chart will tell you that. What we need is a plan that lets us go around Congress and do what the American people do best: fix this mess ourselves. Well, good news. We have that plan and it's already working. Now that we've got the problem covered, let us show you how to be part of the solution.
He said, "There is no justice here for us black people. There is no future for us nor our children in civilized America." Doesn't that imply that you're going to get out, or that's his wish that you get out?
If he referred to those policemen out there as devils, who were heavily armed and knew that the Negroes whom they were shooting down in cold blood were not heavily armed, I don't think that those policemen themselves would deny that they're devils, nor would any Negro who witnessed such a deed deny that they are devils.
Well, about the other part of it, there's no justice here for us black people. There is no future for us nor our children in civilized America. And I didn't make that up. He said it in his own
And he's correct in what he says, sir.
Well, what does it mean? Does it mean you're going to get out, or
It
what?
means the same thing that Attorney General Robert Kennedy means when he says that the #1 domestic problem in America is the race problem, that it is almost impossible to solve it. It's almost impossible to give justice to Negroes.